Experiencing a break-in is a uniquely disturbing experience, especially if you're in the house. Not only does it rob you of your valuables, but also of your sense of safety at home. Maybe you'll never feel safe again. You're about to experience these horrors now. So get comfortable, subscribe, and let the darkness take control. This happened in the year of 1989 when I was 9 years old. I lived in a middle-class neighborhood in Forest, Virginia. It was like a Mayberry-like neighborhood. Most everyone knew each other, no crime, lots of families. Not everyone locked their doors at night. There were lots of kids my age in the neighborhood, but the two on my street were my closest friends, Mitchell and Chase. The three of us were sort of a clique. Whenever a new kid moved into the neighborhood, we'd like to go see him together to see what he was like and decide if he was cool or not. That year, a new family moved into a house near the end of the street. They had just one child, a boy named Parker. We invited him out a few times to play and he seemed cool, so before long he was almost one of the gang. Parker's mum was attractive, blonde, slim, always smiling. However, his dad was not a friendly man. He seemed annoyed by us kids, rarely spoke to us and mostly just acknowledged us with eye rolls and grunts. He also didn't come outside much. He worked nights, so we didn't see him often during the week. And on weekends, he was mostly banging around in his garage. One Saturday afternoon in the fall, Mitch and Chase were both away for some reason, so I went over to Parker's house alone to see if he wanted to play. He said his parents weren't home and invited me inside. That was a really strange experience for me. At 9, my parents never left me alone. They would call a babysitter over if they were going to be gone for even an hour. I asked Parker why he was home alone and made no secret that I was weirded out about it, but he seemed totally fine with it, like it happened all the time. So that put me at ease. We watched TV for a little bit, then abruptly Parker got off the couch and said, "Hey, you want to see something cool?" "Sure," I said. He led me down to the basement and pointed to a tool chest against the wall. "They're in here." Parker opened the bottom cupboard drawer of the tool chest, revealing a huge stack of Playboys. There had to have been at least 50 to 60 issues in there. I had no idea what I was looking at. I'd never seen a naked woman before. The closest I had come was seeing the scantily clad Tanya Roberts in the movie The Beastmasters. I remember watching that movie and being vaguely intrigued by the female form, but what I saw in the Playboys was sort of repulsive. It wasn't necessarily the images of the naked women that churned my stomach, but the dank and musty smell of the basement, the dim lights, the crinkled, stiff, flaky feel of the magazine pages, as if the moisture of the basement was slowly turning them to pulp. It just felt wrong and gross, and I wanted to leave. Still, I just couldn't stop looking. I'd flip through one magazine, toss it back, then flip through another one. Somehow I had this strange notion that I was finally getting something valuable for free. So I needed to cram as much of it into my brain as I could. Finally, Parker said, "We better get out of here. My mom will be home soon. You can tear some pictures out and take them home if you want." I ripped out one of the centerfolds and stuffed it into my pocket. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't want it for any self-gratification purpose. I just had an idea that I could use it to impress Michael and Chase later. When I got home, I stuffed the balled-up centerfold in the back corner of my closet under some toys. Despite not having a deep understanding of what it was, pornography, I was certain that if my mum found it, I'd be in big trouble. I went to sleep like normal that evening, but awoke abruptly in the middle of the night to a rough hand shaking my shoulder. I immediately knew something was wrong, because neither of my parents would have woken me up so firmly, Plus, there was a terrible smell, a rank combination of alcohol and motor oil. I opened my eyes, and with the aid of my bedside light, recognized Parker's dad standing over me, in my house, in my room. I wanted to cry, to scream for my dad, but the man glared down at me with so much hatred, so much fury. I was paralyzed. I was certain that if I did cry out, he would twist the head clean off my neck. "You stole from me." He said this in a low voice, low enough not to wake my parents in the other room, but in the quiet of my room the words rang clear as a bell. He called me the F word. That's what really struck me. No adult had ever used the F word on me. Combined with his tone, expression, and body language, that word just cut me to the bone. "I want it back," he said. Numbly, my heart hammering, I quietly and obediently went to my closet and dug out the balled-up centerfold from beneath the pile of Ninja Turtles. I held it out to him, and he snatched it. At this point, he went on a low, whispery rant at me, including a lecture about thievery and personal property. I don't remember all of it, but it went along the lines of, "I'll tell your parents, I'll call the cops, you'll go to juvie." But he said two phrases I distinctly remember. One was, "Don't ever come in my house again. Don't even step foot in my yard again." And the other was something that was so strange, said with so much sincerity, that it burnt into my memory, and still haunts me to this day. "Don't ever look at this crap again." He clenched his fists around the balled-up centerfold. "It will turn you into something you don't want to be." Then he turned and walked silently out of my room. I was so creeped out about how silent he slipped away. Our floors were carpeted, but he literally made no sound as he disappeared down the hall into the darkness, like some malicious Santa Claus. It was like he had lots of previous practice at sneaking around, which I found even more disturbing. When I thought back on the incident during the following years, it was that sneaking which haunted me most of all, even more than the lecture and the threats. How quietly and stealthily he moved, like the Grinch in the cartoon, but not with that big cartoony stride. Like I would never be safe from him no matter where I went in life. Like any time I went to sleep, he could just appear right there, without a sound, and I'd never hear him coming. The aftermath of this story is a whole story in itself. I won't get into all the details, but just summarize it. No sign of forced entry or evidence of him being there was ever found by me or anyone else. I never told anyone, until I got really close to a few good friends my freshman year of high school. My parents never found out about the incident. I was convinced that I would be in so much trouble if they ever found out, that I just figured it was better to live in fear than face the consequences. Obviously, Parker's dad never mentioned it to either of them, but of course he wouldn't, that trespassing creep. I'm 35 years old now, and have a good relationship with them, but I still can't bring myself to tell them what happened that night. I was emotionally damaged for a while. I had fear and anxiety, and shyness issues. My grades slipped badly that year. I had a hard time sleeping at night after that, and was tired all the time because I had chronic nightmares. My parents got me some prescription sleeping aids, and I couldn't sleep in the dark again until I was at least 15 or 16. I always had to have a lamp on my bedside. I couldn't go near Parker's end of the street from then on, much less in his yard or house. If my parents drove me by the house, I would simply point my head towards the opposite side of the street and pretend to be looking out the window. My family moved 2 years later in 1991, and I never saw Parker again after that. I asked my dad sometime later if he always locked the doors at night. He says, yes, most of the time, but sometimes I forget. I asked him if he made sure all the windows were locked at night, and he said that no, sometimes our mum opened them, and he forgot to lock them back when she closed them. So that answers the question as to how he got in the house. I still get queasy when I see porn. On one hand, like any red-blooded male, images of the internet of attractive women wearing no clothes catch my eye. But when I really start to stare and get into the moment, the fear of that night starts creeping back in. The unanswered questions. How did he even find out I had the page? Had he gotten home, seen his magazines weren't in proper order, and grilled Parker about it? Why the hell would this guy make such a fuss and go to some extreme measures just to retrieve one torn-out page of an old Playboy? Makes no sense. What did he mean by, "It will turn you into something you wouldn't want to be"? A trespasser? An asshole who terrorizes kids? A porn addict? Was what he did to me that night, in some weird-ass way, his twisted attempt to try and do something altruistic to me? To warn me off from becoming like him? How does a guy have so much balls? Seriously. My parents were asleep, one room away. My dad was a big dude, bigger than him, and my dad would have thrown that man right through a wall if he had caught him in my room in the middle of the night. Regardless, malicious Santa Claus, overprotective porn collector, terrorizer of children, and source of my nightmares, and scar on my childhood. Let's not meet again. I'm a security guard for an alarm response company. We answer alarms for businesses and private residences. 99% of the time it's a motion detector set off by a cat, or a restaurant forgot to disarm their staff before the stock truck arrived to unload. In this case, I was called out to a house where the back door alarm was set off, like it thought someone had opened it. The owner was out of town, but she was alerted by her app and had her mother meet me there. We checked the door, it's locked, and figured that maybe someone tried the door but it didn't budge, setting off the alarm, but there's a light on inside. The mum mentions this to her daughter on the phone, and the daughter says she isn't sure if she left the light on or not. It's a good idea to make people think someone's home, but she just isn't sure. That gave me a bad tingle. The mother wanted to go inside to check, however she didn't have a spare key. The neighbor did, but they were asleep, and the mum didn't want to wake them. So I fill out my papers and go back to my normal patrol route. An hour later, the same home sends an alert out. I'm the only one in my city zone, so I answer it again. When I pull up, police and CSI are there talking to the mother and the now awake neighbor. They are reviewing video footage sent to them by the daughter. I look at the footage. 4 armed men wearing masks and hoodies came out of the bathroom a minute after the mother and I left. They proceeded to rob the place. They had broken in and locked the door behind them for appearances. They're the ones who turned on the light. The mother told me 3 guys had robbed her daughter's home a month before. Somehow they knew when the girl would be out of town. They appeared smart, desiring a quiet robbery without conflict, but they brought guns, so they were prepared to shoot their way out of trouble if need be. The mother had wanted to go in. If she had a key, or woken the neighbor for the key, we would have likely been shot dead by these guys when we went inside. Work doesn't give me Kevlar vests or anything. If I ever get another house call and someone is there, I'm not going inside no matter what. I count myself fortunate the way was blocked this time, because I was prepared to foolishly go in and check if I could. The 1% of calls where something is actually off. It has never been as bad as this one. To the armed robbers, let's not meet. I live in a not so large, not so friendly block of flats. Well, it's really more of a converted old Victorian house, which is now modified into 5 small flats per block, with there being 4 blocks and me living in the second one. Just for some context, the main door is really crappy and still hasn't been replaced even though the entire building has been refurbished. This is the case despite the landlord promising it would be done by New Year. Anyway, this door doesn't lock when you close it. It has to be locked manually either by the key from the outside or by the twisty lock on the inside. Unfortunately, the people who live around me can be, well, let's say rude, and that's putting it kindly. They're always blasting music until late, setting off the fire alarm which is linked in every flat, and it's super loud and annoying. I'm smoking inside most of the time. However, the most annoying thing, always, and I mean always, is leaving the main door unlocked. This was nothing more than annoying up until very recently, when something truly horrific happened as a result. It was a Thursday night, and as usual I was getting ready for bed at around 11 PM. And as per usual, despite it being a weekday, one of the surrounding flats in a different block to mine was throwing a party. This was annoying and unfair. Come on guys, for real, who throws a party on a Thursday? I mean, just wait for Friday. Not only that though, it's supposed to be lockdown, so while other people can't even see their families, me included, you get to keep everyone up. The music was noticeable but not super loud from the comfort of my bedroom, thankfully. So I do what I always do when I go to bed. I put on some scary stories to help me chill out and sleep. So I finally managed to drift off at around midnight, and I awoke for the first time at around 2 because of the music. So I growl and begrudgingly get up to go to the bathroom, as I thought I may as well as I'm already up. So annoyed and frustrated, I get back into bed and continue to enjoy my stories until I'm asleep once more. I'm suddenly awoken by loud stomps coming up the stairs. I live at the very top of the building, so the final staircase only leads to my door. Now I'm more exhausted than angry, so I just lie there awake until I hear something that jolts my half-asleep brain fully awake. My door is being pushed. Someone is actually trying to push open my door and enter my flat, without my permission. Not hard or forcefully, mind you. Not like they were trying to break it down, but they definitely tried to gain entry. Now this may be just because my mind was still foggy, or that I was still so tired that I didn't care, but I stupidly assumed it was some drunken partygoer who had mistakenly gone to the wrong block. Maybe the party was at a different top floor flat, so I ignored them, even when it happened again and I could hear scratching and mumbling on the other side of the door. Stupid, I know, but I really wanted to sleep. So the next morning I woke up as usual and got ready for work. As I opened my door to leave, what do I see? 2 men sleeping on the floor blocking my way, one bleeding from his head. And I'm not judgmental, or at least try not to be, but these men were clearly homeless. I mean, the smell of one alone told me that it was like having a ball of dirt slapped in your face. Not ideal for an early morning start. When I eventually got one of them to get up, the other failed to do so. He was clearly on drugs and was completely out of it. Thankfully for me, the man was okay. I mean, I could have just been rushed, but they explained that they had been attacked and chased and took shelter here. I offered to call an ambulance, which the men eventually accepted, through a one-sided conversation of murmurs and groans. So I stepped out to get a better look at the man on the ground, and as I did, the other stepped inside my flat. I stared at him with our eyes locked, and he came right back out without incident as I locked my door. The ambulance eventually arrived. I had to dial 999 as there was no one manning the non-emergency number, probably because of the current pandemic, and I went to work. Informed the landlord, and he would warn the other people living there apparently that they must keep the door locked. But of course every morning I get to work and the door is wide open without consequence. But the real kicker is that because the guy was bleeding and homeless, I didn't want to clean it up myself, so I had to get a professional cleaner to do it. And when I asked for my landlord to chip in, he ignored me for a few days, and when he eventually got back to me, he said, it's only on the walks. Brilliant. So I ended up paying the whole thing myself because I just didn't feel comfortable with it being around me. Now, I do not believe those men had intentions to hurt me, but what if I hadn't have locked my door? What if they had have gotten in? When people are desperate and opportunities present themselves, you really don't know what people will do. 2 of them, 1 of me, alone, asleep, vulnerable. Pretty scary when you think about it. I am currently at a college in Boston and have an apartment in the North End with my buddy. We're both 21-year-old males. My girlfriend came up for the weekend to visit, and we were doing our normal weekend thing and drinking and just hanging out. My roommate convinced us to watch Green Inferno because it just made its way to Netflix and I've been meaning to watch it. Horribly messed up movie, but pretty good if you like a gruesome horror flick and don't mind bad acting. 3/4 of the way through the movie, I kept hearing this banging noise coming from what sounded like inside our building. At first I ignored it, thinking I was just hearing things, or it was the noise from the busy main street that our apartment building is on. But after a few times, I thought I heard a girl scream. I paused the movie and asked my roommate and girlfriend if they heard it, and they both did. But we shrugged it off as random kids getting drunk. I heard it twice or more, and it wasn't sitting right with me. So I paused it and said to my roommate, "Let's just take a walk down the stairs and check the halls." We left our place on the 4th floor and headed towards the stairs where we saw a man who looked to be in his mid to late 20s sitting on the stairs outside an apartment, and he looked like he was a mess. We asked him if this was his place, and he kind of said yes, but not definitely, and sounded a bit drunk. We had no reason not to believe him, so we went back to our room. But right when we got back, I remember that the only people that lived in that unit were 2 or 3 girls, and my one roommate agreed. We decided to head back out there, and at this point my girlfriend was freaked out. We approached him again and asked him if he was sure this was his place. He stood up and said yeah, and proceeded to aggressively bang on the door multiple times. When he stood up, I immediately noticed the poop stains on his white jeans and pointed it out to my roommate. We are both in shape guys and realized right away if anything needed to happen we could easily take this guy on. At this point, we both said that we think he should leave, because it clearly wasn't his abode. I mean, the dude crapped himself. He looked at us, back to the door, where he tried 5 different keys on the lock. Obviously none of them worked, so we again firmly told him to leave the building. The whole time he really didn't argue with us and never gave us a firm answer, further proving our point that he was messed up and didn't belong here. At this point something must have clicked in his head. He started heading down the stairs, with us closely in tow making sure he left, while plugging our noses and gagging on the stench of his crapped pants. When we were in sight of the landing at the base of the stairs, the sight we saw made our stomachs drop. We saw a phone with earbuds on the top shelf that sits there, a hoodie strewn across the floor with a mask a few feet away, a satchel looking like bag even further away, and a package that I had seen in the lobby earlier. As soon as I saw this, I thought the absolute worst, and it looked like a struggle had taken place. I then asked him in an aggressive tone what he did, and I could tell he was scared now. He refused to answer me and tried to bang and open the apartment on the 1st floor, claiming that it was his place. He then went to collect his things from the floor, and just to make sure, I made him unlock the iPhone in front of us to prove it. It was Touch ID and he opened it. We did not like the way he was acting, so he kept insisting he should leave, as he formed answers back that were barely English. After that, he proceeded to walk towards the back of the building in a rather brisk pace. There is a tighter staircase at the back which leads to all floors, as well as an alley out the back of the building. This is probably the strangest part, as very few people knew about this exit to our building, but he headed there with speed and confidence. My roommate followed close behind to make sure he left and shut the back door firmly, as once it's shut it can't be opened from the outside. I was far back, gagging on the stench. After this, we went out the front door together and walked around to the back door to make sure the man was gone. We slipped a note under the door of the girls saying we saw a man and made him leave, and to come knock or text us if they need anything, as we wanted to make sure they were okay. Luckily, this man left without any problem occurring between him and my roommates, and, as I imagine, that definitely could have ended in an ugly manner. We knew girls lived there, and this man was giving off terribly creepy vibes. We aren't oblivious. I knew there was a strong chance he had ill intent with these girls, so we needed to act. To the creepy man who was terrorizing the girls, please let's not ever meet. And you might want to pick up some adult diapers. So, it turns out the girl who lives in the apartment was luckily not home when this all went down. She ended up texting us, so we explained what happened, and she was very freaked out. She called the landlord who got us to get our story, and she believes it could have been an old tenant who was subletting over the summer that constantly got locked out. He would come back drunk, bang on his door, and one time it actually broke down. It's hard to me to think it was the same guy, as he didn't start banging on the door until after we mentioned we knew a girl lived there. Also, this apartment is a floor above, and in a different spot than the one the old tenant was in. This happened less than a month ago. I'm a petite female in my 20s. I'm currently living in Mexico to escape life a little after postgrad, in a city that is not known as a dangerous place. A lot of foreigners live here, and I haven't heard any safety concerns. I'm living with my cousin who works from 8 AM to 7 PM. The houses are in a pretty good area with a school, nice hotel, and Starbucks within walking distance, just to give you an idea of how unexpected this was. This incident happened while my aunt was visiting us from Mexico City. She stayed home all day with me while I usually studied or watched Netflix. On this day, I was planning to have a chill day since I had woken up at around 11:30 AM. I was watching something on my computer when I started to hear some loud pounding, like someone was working on something with a hammer. This was around midday. I thought my aunt had let some repairman in to do some work. I was under the assumption my aunt was still in the house, so I wasn't too worried and continued to watch my show. The hard noise stopped, and I heard two male voices talking casually. This made me feel more confident that they were there to fix something. I get up from bed to fetch my phone, as I don't have any service plan down here, to message my aunt on Facebook to see what was going on. I didn't get a reply from her, so I just took it as she was busy, and go back to lying in bed to not think of anything of the noises. 5 minutes later, I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. Take in mind I'm lying in bed with my back to the door when the door opens and I see a man. He was a pretty normal looking guy with facial hair and dressed rather cleanly. Like if you saw him in public you wouldn't think anything negative about him. As soon as he saw me, he shut my door and went downstairs. Then I heard another huge noise that I later realized was him slamming the front door shut. My room is first room directly above the stairs, so my first thought was that this repairman accidentally opened my door. I thought he was trying to get access to our patio. I was a little confused, but again didn't think anything of the situation. I slowly walk downstairs calling my aunt's name, but I get no response. As soon as I make it down the stairs, I hear my aunt in a panicked voice saying, "They just robbed us! They took the TV!" She forgot to lock the first iron door of the house, which made it easy for them to break into the second door. She said that when she was walking by from the store, she noticed someone by the house. She asked him what he wanted and he said he was looking for a teacher. Then he got into a car with the other man and left. She didn't notice the TV in their car or anything suspicious until she got to the house. She mentioned that someone had rang the doorbell before she left to go to the store. When she went to check, no one was there. She believes they've been watching her and my cousin, so when they opened the bedroom door they were caught off guard and dipped. It's really frightening to think what could have happened if they didn't get scared off by seeing me. The cops came and were then telling me that they often kidnap girls or rape them. I know I got lucky. This started 2 years ago. I dropped out of school. I was at home every day, suffering from depression and anxiety. And since both of my parents work, I was alone in my house a lot of the time. So on one day, I'm alone and chilling as usual, watching Netflix and eating some snacks in my room, when I hear the phone ring. I never answer it, even if I'm home alone, because of my anxiety, so I just ignored it, even if the person was really persistent. Then a few seconds later, I heard noises in the hall of my residence. I live on the ground floor, so when someone makes a noise I hear it, and I just assumed it was the neighbors. But a few seconds later I heard someone ringing and knocking on the door brutally. With my anxiety issues, I started to feel anxious and grab a knife in case this person was trying to break into my house, and was then met with silence. But when I thought it was all over, I heard someone who was literally beating at the kitchen window so hard that my window opened. At this point, I was hiding in the hallway with a knife, so I got to see the man's face when he opened the window and looked into the kitchen to see if anyone was there. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. But when I discreetly looked at the man's face, it was a disturbing sight. He was really chill, cold, and relaxed looking. He looked into the kitchen one last time and just left. I knew there was something wrong with this guy. But I was so scared that I just called my aunt to pick me up, because I really didn't want to spend more time at home after what had just happened. So I was waiting, still holding my knife, anxiety poisoning me, until she arrived. Days after the incident, I hadn't seen the guy since. That was 2 years ago now. But yesterday, my dad told me something he had never said before, because he didn't want it to flare up my anxiety. 2 sisters who lived in my neighborhood saw a guy hanging around my house for a few days, especially around my bedroom window, as my window sits just in front of the residential parking lot. And the guy was hiding behind cars and watching me through windows. I had no clue what was going on. One day, one of the sisters took a photo of the guy, so he knew he had been found. The girl who took the picture told my dad about it, and my dad was watching to see if the guy was still at our place but never saw him again. And since then, no one saw him. I don't know if his first move was knocking and ringing to see if there was anyone home. I don't know if he figured it was me or not. I think his second move was to stalk and hang around my window, but when one of the sisters took a photo of him, he knew he was screwed. That's why when my dad was watching if the guy was still around, he never showed. He knew that if he went through with his foul plan that he'd be screwed. But what would have happened if nobody had seen him? If no one took a picture? I really wonder what his intentions were, and how dark they truly are. I live alone. Have done for a few years. This story takes place 2 years ago, before the start of the pandemic. It was just an average Saturday night. It was 1 a.m. and I was up late, gaming in the basement. I'd set up my basement for a gamer's paradise. I had all the old consoles, controllers, memory cards, everything you can think of. And it would be customary that every other Saturday, I would have my friends over for some huge and epic gaming nights. This Saturday, however, was one without company. I was downstairs, headphones in, and numbing my brain with excessive gameplay, when all of a sudden, I finished a level, and the music stopped briefly on the loading screen. That's when I heard a faint smack upstairs. Immediately I removed my headphones and listened more attentively. A second smack. Something or someone was at my door. I looked at my watch. It was really late, far too late for anyone to be here. I tentatively started to climb the stairs, wary that it could be something horrible waiting for me, but nonetheless made my way up. An important note is that the basement door opens inwards. Therefore, as I started to pull it open, I slowly peeked my head through, assuming that if anyone were looking in, they wouldn't be able to see me, as from any window on the upstairs landing, it would be fairly clear if the door were open the other way. I peeked my head through and instantly see through the window and illuminated by the orange streetlight, a few people standing at my door. They had what appeared to be a crowbar and were trying to pry my door open. Now, I live in a relatively safe area and had always just locked my door out of habit, but now there was someone trying to break in. My door wasn't particularly strong and my locks weren't that great. I knew that it was just a matter of time. I slowly closed the door and locked the basement door from the inside. The basement door lock, in fact, was one I had installed as a prank against some friends. I made my way downstairs, put my cell phone near the window, and started dialing 911. When the operator came on, I frantically told her that there were men breaking into my house and that they had crowbars. She didn't miss a beat and told me that she would be dispatching someone very soon indeed. She stayed with me on the line. All the while I waited in absolute agony, fearing that the men were going to come closer, maybe break down my door in any second. I was absolutely petrified. I stood there next to the window, trying to hear what the operator was saying, her words of comfort keeping me sane, as the beautiful sound of police sirens permeated the night. I heard an absolutely colossal scuffle from upstairs, and then the police exiting the vehicle and gave chase. At the end of it, only a few things were stolen. They managed to catch a few of the criminals, but I didn't ever retrieve all of my items. The real loss here is my sense of security. If anyone's experienced a break-in, perhaps they feel the same thing. I just feel unsafe. I've had extra locks put on my doors, even latches put on my windows, but now I just feel vulnerable. I have security cameras outside my home and bought a specialist TV which I turn on almost every night just to watch the outside of my home. It's getting to be a bit excessive, I know, but it's the only way I sleep at night, and sometimes I still don't feel safe in my own home. They robbed me of that feeling of safety, and that's something I can never forgive them for. When I was a teenager, my older brother moved out and my parents worked late, so occasionally I would spend the evenings by myself after school. We lived in the countryside a few miles out of town and had a good collection of neighbors. The day went as normal. I went to school, got home, turned on the TV, had a snack, and texted one of my friends who I had a crush on. It wasn't long after that I noticed a man outside my house. He walked past a few times. He wasn't an ordinary person walking around the block. He looked scraggly and unkempt. I ducked as far as I could behind a chair, still trying to see him out of the living room window, hoping he didn't see me. But soon, he came to the front door and knocked. I was texting my friend the entire time, increasingly getting freaked out. As he knocked on the door, I stupidly went to answer. I had my phone on me with 911 at the ready. I tried to silently unlock the door and not alert the man. I opened the door a crack. There was a screen door separating myself and the man. I was ready to slam the door and lock it if anything happened. The man looked at me with crazed, paranoid eyes. He had a large, dark beard and looked to be in his late 50s or early 60s. He seemed out of breath, and his face was drenched with sweat. He was larger too, more the reason to keep my guard. I sheepishly said, "Hello?" "Please, call the police, they're after me," he said in an exhausted voice. He kept looking at the road and tensed whenever a car would occasionally pass. "Who's after you?" I asked, getting ready to slam the door. I barely escaped. They were right behind me. Please, can I come inside?" At this point, I knew to call the police. "Just wait here, I'll get some help." My heart was in my throat at this time. I didn't know if this was the guy that was trying to force the door open, so I quickly shut it and locked it. I ran to the back door and locked that as well, as I called 911. My heart was racing and I could barely tell the operator my information, but they said they would send someone out. It wasn't long until a patrol car arrived, but it felt like forever. The entire time I kept watching the man, who then walked into my driveway, pacing nervously. The officer got out and proceeded to talk with the man, and they got in the car and left. I have no idea what happened to him, nor if he was telling the truth. He could have been drunk or crazy, but it was genuine fear in his eyes when I looked at him. Something truly scared him, and it scared me to think that there could be someone out there that wanted people for whatever reason. So to the crazed, scared man, and whoever he was running from, I'd rather we not meet. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. Right, I did say in yesterday's video about the black screen, and a lot of you commented that you love it. So I'm going to have to think up of some compromise or something. I really do want to try and improve it. Think of it like this. If, let's say, half of you absolutely love the black screen, but the other half of you, don't mind either way. But an even bigger percentage of, potential subscribers from the future really don't care much for a black screen, then I'm missing out. And don't get me wrong, don't get me wrong here. I love and value all of you so much. I just really want to keep growing. And I wonder if the black screen is sort of holding me back. This is my thought process here. I think it'd be good to have a live stream where I can actually talk to you guys and we can talk about this and maybe do some polls, get some real data on this, Because I really want what's best for you, the channel, just for you guys and the channel. And I was thinking, right, if you guys like the black screen because you can fall asleep to it, I'm assuming that most of you, according to my data, use mobiles when you listen to my videos. So why not just, put it under your pillow or something? Or turn the brightness down? Just options, I'm just saying. Think about it. Tell me in the comments. I really want to create this discourse between you guys. I want to know because I need to know. And if you are thinking that nothing needs to change, that's a valid thing to say. And I know a lot of you don't comment, but I would really appreciate it if you started doing so. Just for today, just while we're having this process going on. Maybe voting too. Probably going to be putting out more polls, which is something I want to talk about as well. Sometimes I put out silly polls. I tried it for a week. By the end of the week, people were saying, "Oh, I hate these polls so much." But the thing is, that's, again, I don't know if it's a small percentage of you, a large percentage of you. I don't want to do something that's going to annoy you guys. And I think you can actually turn off poll notifications, in fact. But the point is, I want everyone to be happy moving forward, and, we're making these improvements with the sound and, hopefully with other stuff. So yeah, let's keep the conversation flowing. I've been talking about this for 2 minutes now, 2.5. So I'm going to wrap things up here. Thank you to my lovely members and patrons. If you'd like to join in the fun, you can do that. Small donation every month and it means the world to me. I'm going to end things here though for now, guys. Stay awesome, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.